went on this tear where she said, essentially, that you called your daughter, who works for Erika, the day before Charlie's, or very soon before, Charlie was murdered at UVU.
Here's what Candace Owens specifically called out Tracy Martin for, along with her daughter, who was working as Erika's assistant. This situation started from a tip that Candace Owens says she received, but she also claims parts of this information have been confirmed. So let's break this down clearly, because this is the context that shapes everything else in the video, and it points directly to the question everyone keeps asking. Candace Owens is stating that Tracy Martin's daughter, who was indeed working as Erika's assistant, had plans to go to UVU on September 10th with Charlie Kirk. According to Candace, she was expected to be there with the production team and was scheduled to work that day. That's the very specific claim being made here. But here's where things take a turn. Tracy Martin's daughter did not show up that day, and Candace claims the reason is that Tracy told her daughter not to go because she had a bad feeling about it. That's the key point. Candace keeps emphasizing, and she presents it as confirmed from her perspective. Now this leads directly into the interview between Graham Allen and Tracy Martin. It's important to point out that Tracy's response to this topic didn't come quickly. It took around 20 minutes for her to answer, and even then, the response didn't stay focused the entire time. During that exchange, Graham Allen actually had to bring the conversation back on track multiple times just to get a clear response. And as the discussion unfolds, you start to notice a pattern forming in how the question is being handled. So if you're watching this and thinking the question isn't being directly answered, that reaction makes sense. That's exactly how it comes across when you look at how the conversation plays out. She starts talking, but instead of answering the actual question,
we introduced to you Erika's best friend for over 15 years, a woman by the name of Tracy Martin. Now, we were working off of a tip that Tracy may have been with Erika when Erika got the call from Elizabeth and Mikey McCoy, because they were both on the phone, even though that was never revealed to the public until later. Tracy, I am told, because she's privatized her public profiles, but I am told that she has denied that claim. Okay, let's assume Tracy's telling the truth and that she was not with Erika on September 10th. It's not even relevant to what we're about to reveal to you, because what Tracy cannot deny is that her daughter is indeed Erika's assistant. I've confirmed that.
She shifts the focus right back onto herself. She's discussing how she looks in a photo, mentioning her background, even bringing up things like being raised around horses. And like some people pointed out, she even starts promoting her book, but that's not what was asked at all. The real question was simple and direct. What does your daughter do for Erika Kirk? And did you tell your daughter not to go to UVU because you believed she might not be safe? That's it. No long explanation needed, no side stories, just a clear answer. That was her first attempt, and instead of staying on track, the response goes in a completely different direction. Then, after circling around, she tries to come back to the discussion involving Candace Owens, and eventually starts talking about her daughter again, but still not in a direct way. Now, to be fair, Graham Allen does try to guide things back. He steps in and attempts to refocus the conversation, asking again what her daughter's role actually was. That's the key point he keeps pushing toward, but once again, the answer drifts off course. The focus goes back to her personally instead of addressing the daughter's role. And then comes a very clear statement. She says her daughter never worked for Turning Point. That's important because that detail becomes a major part of the overall timeline being discussed. At this point, even viewers are starting to notice what's happening. If you're thinking she still hasn't answered the question, that's exactly how it comes across.
And I want to be very clear here that this young woman did nothing wrong. She's not done anything wrong. I'm intentionally choosing not to name her daughter because I don't want people to stalk her, to reach out to her, or to try to learn anything about her life. She, like I said, has done nothing wrong. And in many ways, she's just beginning her life, okay? She doesn't get to choose who her parents are, and who among us would not jump at an opportunity to go work with the wife of the CEO of a massive student organization like Turning Point USA. You would accept that job gleefully. That's a wonderful opportunity in life, so.
The conversation even shifts briefly into talking about Candace Owens again, instead of staying on the original topic. And to clarify, Candace presented her claim as something she received through a tip, saying that Tracy Martin told her daughter not to go to work at UVU that day because she felt something was off. At the same time, Candace avoided naming the daughter directly and made it clear that the daughter wasn't being blamed or accused of anything. She even told her audience not to go after the daughter, emphasizing that she did nothing wrong. So the focus here isn't about targeting anyone. It's about the question itself and whether it was ever clearly answered. Now, this is where things start getting even more layered, because once you step back and look at everything together, the timeline becomes the main focus. And when the timeline becomes the focus, the small details suddenly matter a lot more than they first seemed. We already have the key claim from Candace Owens laid out clearly. Tracy Martin's daughter was expected to be at UVU on September 10th, working alongside the production team connected to Erika Kirk. That part is important because it places her directly in the environment where everything was supposed to unfold. But then comes the gap. She doesn't show up. And not only does she not show up, but the explanation being pushed is that her mother told her not to go because of a bad feeling. That's the detail that keeps raising questions, because it's very specific, and it directly connects to the timing of everything.
I just want to overstate here that this young woman needs to be left entirely alone, okay? Choosing not to name her. However, it is a fact that she was supposed to go to UVU on September 10th. I remind you, this is Erika's assistant. And it sort of tracks, given Erika's public admission, that she too was considering going. But remember, Charlie told her, home needs you. Home needs you. So she was instead going to go meet him at the next event, which was in Colorado, slated for later that week. Charlie did not want her to go to the UVU event because the kids needed her. Home needs her. But he totally wanted her to become the chairman and the CEO of the company in his absence, right? Like, that totally tracks. That makes perfect sense. Anyway. But the reason that Erika's assistant and her mother, Tracy, Erika's best friend, told people in their orbit something quite interesting, actually. The reason that they told her that they didn't go is different from the reason that Erika didn't go, obviously. Tracy and her daughter told people that Tracy had a bad feeling. Like I told you, we confirmed that. Tracy had a bad feeling, and so she stopped her daughter from going to UVU. This is now confirmed. It's a fact.
Now think about how this plays out from a viewer's perspective. You hear that someone was scheduled to be present at a very specific place on a very specific date, connected to a known event, and then suddenly they're not there. And the reason given is not scheduling conflict, not illness, not something routine, but a bad feeling. That alone is enough to make people pause and start asking more questions. And this is exactly where the interview becomes critical, because that was the opportunity to clear everything up in a clean and simple way. One direct question, one direct answer, and the entire situation could have been clarified instantly. But that's not what happened. Instead, what viewers saw was a conversation that kept moving away from the core issue. Graham Allen kept trying to bring it back, asking about the daughter's role, asking about the situation directly, but every time it got close to the center, it drifted again. And when that happens, repeatedly, people don't just ignore it, they start paying even more attention. Because now it's not just about the original claim anymore. It becomes about why the answer isn't being given clearly. That shift changes everything. Now let's break this down even further. If the daughter truly had no connection to the work being described, then that could have been stated in a single sentence. Clear, direct, no confusion. But instead, what came out was a statement that she never worked for Turning Point. While at the same time, earlier context suggests she was expected to be present with the production team. Those two things don't automatically cancel each other out, but they do create confusion if they aren't explained properly. Because being scheduled to assist or be present in a working environment doesn't always mean formal employment. And that's where clarity becomes important. But again, that clarity never fully comes. And this is why the audience reaction starts to shift. Because people aren't just listening to what's being said, they're noticing what isn't being said. That's a huge difference. When a question is asked multiple times and the answer keeps going in different directions, it creates a pattern. And once a pattern is noticed, it's hard to ignore. Now add in the fact that this entire situation is tied to a very specific date, a specific location, and a specific set of people. And suddenly, every missing detail starts to feel more important. This is where the conversation online starts building momentum. People begin connecting the dots themselves. They start asking if she was scheduled, who scheduled her? If she was supposed to be there, what exactly was her role? If she didn't go, what changed? And most importantly, why wasn't that explained clearly when directly asked? Those are simple questions, but they carry weight because they are grounded in the timeline. And timelines don't rely on opinions. They rely on sequence. What happened before? What was supposed to happen? And what actually happened instead? And right now, Those three pieces don't fully line up in a way that answers
Went on this tear where she said, essentially, that you called your daughter, who works for Erika, the day before Charlie's, or very soon before,
Right.
Charlie was murdered at UVU. That is what she said, and she has used that as a conspiracy that you had prior knowledge, potentially, of Charlie's assassination, that Erika definitely had prior knowledge of Charlie's potential assassination. Or she would say, I didn't exactly say that, but she insinuates.
Right,
And
the
she's
implication.
and she has affected your family's life.
Yes.
So let's set the record straight, shall we?
Absolutely.
One, does your daughter in fact work for Erika, and how does she work for Erika?
So I will go back to how we got here.
Okay.
I think it would be, so people can track this. I think it's more important. So I posted a video 3 months after Charlie's assassination in defense of Erika's character. More than anything, I saw what was happening and I just was like, no.
everything cleanly. Now, another key detail here is how careful Candace Owens was when presenting this information. She specifically avoided naming the daughter publicly. She made it clear that the daughter wasn't being blamed, wasn't being targeted, and didn't do anything wrong. That's important because it shows that the focus wasn't on attacking anyone personally. The focus was on the claim itself and the timeline around it. And that distinction matters a lot in how this is being discussed, because instead of turning into something personal, it stays centered on the sequence of events. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. When you have a situation where someone is expected to be somewhere, doesn't show up, and the reason given is a warning based on a feeling that creates a moment, that stands out. Not because it proves anything on its own, but because it becomes a key point in the timeline. It's one of those moments where people start asking, was this coincidence, or was there something more behind that decision?
So I did the video, and then a few months after that, it was another video just talking about the climate in the world. I mean, with what I do in this world, with working with individuals and families, I see behavior and I see patterns. I recognize patterns really quickly. And so I was watching what was happening with Candace Owens. And so then all of a sudden, I'm with my mom and dad in Missouri, by the way. She did get that right. I did live in Missouri. I was raised in Missouri. And so I was with my parents, and people were texting me going, "Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? Are you?" I'm like, "You guys, I'm with my mom and dad, taking care of my older parents."
And again, without clear answers, those questions don't go away. They grow. Now, it's also important to stay grounded here. A missed appearance, even with an unusual explanation, doesn't automatically mean anything beyond that moment. People make decisions for all kinds of reasons, and sometimes those reasons are personal and not meant to be explained publicly. But when that moment is directly tied to a larger conversation, and when it's brought up publicly in an interview, it naturally becomes part of the discussion. That's just how public conversations work. And once it's part of the discussion, clarity becomes even more important, because without clarity, the audience fills in the gaps themselves. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen here. People are taking the pieces that are available and trying to build a complete picture. Some focus on the timeline, some focus on the interview responses, some focus on what was said, and others focus on what wasn't. And all of that combined creates a situation where the story keeps developing, even without new information. That's the power of unanswered questions. They keep the conversation alive. And right now, the biggest question still remains the same as it was from the beginning. What exactly was the daughter's role that day, and why didn't she go? Because until that is answered clearly and directly, everything else continues to circle around that one point. And that's why this part of the story matters so much. It's not about speculation. It's not about jumping to conclusions.
And so I got on my phone and I was like, interesting. So all I see is photos of myself, photos of my husband, and she did use great photos, which I'm thankful for that. But it was basically, who am I? All of the implied framing that she does, not asking neutral questions. It's always implication. Mm-hmm. Who is this person? Well, what does her husband do? All the things. So just a rapid fire. Number one, was raised in Missouri, was raised with horses, definitely not raised wealthy. And the funny thing is all my life is out in a book, which has been out 2 years ago.
It's about understanding the timeline clearly. And right now, that timeline still has gaps that people can't ignore. No one is in danger here, and that needs to be said clearly from the start. But what's really catching attention is how the situation keeps getting framed in a way that shifts the focus away from the actual questions. The narrative that keeps popping up is that Candace Owens is somehow putting people at risk just by talking about this. That's a serious claim, and it's being repeated so often that people are starting to question the intention behind it. Because when you step back and really look at it, what's actually happening? You have someone raising questions based on a tip, laying out a timeline, and asking for clarity. That's it. There's no call for harm, no encouragement of reckless behavior, nothing like that. The focus has been on understanding what happened and why certain details don't line up the way they should. But instead of staying on that track, the conversation keeps getting redirected. Suddenly, it becomes about danger, about risk, about what might happen instead of what actually did happen. And that shift changes everything. Because now the discussion isn't about facts anymore, it's about fear. And once fear enters the conversation, it becomes much easier to control the narrative. Think about how this plays out. If something unexpected were to happen, even something completely unrelated, the groundwork is already being laid to point fingers. The setup is already there.
And then she came back again, and she then brought my daughter in and saying that we had this prior knowledge that you're speaking of, which is absolutely crazy. And so to address that was basically my daughter. It had been talked about that my daughter was going to start possibly traveling with Charlie and Erika months earlier. During the summer, they travel as a family. We had conversations.
What did she do? What did your daughter do before that? So they start talking to her about this, but what was her job?
Her job is for Proclaim Streetwear, which is the clothing line.
Erika's clothing
brand,
line.
yes,
Okay.
that I actually helped her create. And just, that, and then Bible 365 Ministry.
So not Turning Point.
She's never worked for Turning Point.
Okay.
People are already saying, look at what was said, instead of asking what actually happened. That's what has a lot of people concerned, because it feels less like a reaction and more like a preloaded response, like the outcome is already decided before anything even takes place. And when that happens, it raises a bigger question about fairness. Is this really about protecting people, or is it about controlling who gets to speak and what they're allowed to say? That's the real tension here. On one side, you have individuals saying this kind of discussion is irresponsible. On the other side, you have people saying they just want answers and transparency. And those two sides are not meeting in the middle at all. Instead, they're pulling further apart. And as that gap grows, the conversation gets louder, more intense, and more divided. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. The more the focus shifts toward labeling the discussion as dangerous, the less attention is being given to the original timeline. And that timeline is still the core of everything. A scheduled appearance, a sudden absence, a reason that raises eyebrows, and a series of questions that haven't been clearly answered. Those details haven't gone anywhere. They're still there, sitting in the background while the spotlight moves somewhere else. And people notice that, because when a conversation avoids the center and keeps circling around it.
And so, and also Candace had said when I did speak with Candace, so I do want to say this. I reached out to Candace through a video.
Yeah, you had a conversation with her.
I reached out to Candace on a video basically saying, here I am, okay? If you have these questions and you want to know what's going on and you really want the truth by someone who actually has the truth, I'm right here. I have nothing to hide. And she did send me a DM. And so I did reach back out. We had an hour conversation last week on Sunday.
So hold on. I'm sorry. I have to stop you. So what you're saying is Candace Owens defames you, lies about you and your family, and she reaches out to you, and you had a conversation with Candace Owens on the phone. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So you and Candace Owens have spoken.
It naturally creates more curiosity. Why not just address it directly? Why not give a clear explanation that closes the loop? That's what many viewers are asking right now. Instead, what they're seeing is a shift toward criticism of the person asking the questions rather than addressing the questions themselves. And that's where the frustration starts to build, because it feels like the conversation is being redirected instead of resolved. Now let's be fair here. Public discussions can get heated, especially when they involve sensitive topics or well-known figures. It's normal for people to have strong reactions. And it's understandable that some would want to be cautious about how information is presented. But at the same time, shutting down questions doesn't make them disappear. It usually does the opposite. It makes people more curious, more engaged, and more determined to find answers. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The more the focus shifts away from the details, the more people go back and look at those details even closer. They replay clips. They analyze statements. They compare timelines. Because at the end of the day, people want clarity. Not confusion, not redirection, not labels, but clear, direct answers. And until those answers are given, the conversation isn't going anywhere.
On the phone.
Yes.
I'm curious, I'm just guessing here, was this in regards to this hit piece documentary that she's trying to put together for Erika Kirk? Was that your understanding of this?
So I think after being on the phone with her for an hour, I think that because there was a moment where she said, we are at an impasse. Which, again, just from what I do, an impasse means that we no longer agree. So, and then we're going to go our separate ways. And an impasse to me, whenever you decide to call me, my intention for the phone call was to set the record straight.
Right.
About the lies, about the defamation, about all the things that you were saying about my family, and especially my daughter, because you put people in harm's way with no regard.
Now, here's the part that really stands out. This situation has turned into more than just a single claim or a single interview moment. It's become a bigger conversation about how narratives are shaped in real time, about how quickly the focus can move from facts to framing, and about how audiences respond when they feel like they're not getting the full picture. That's what makes this moment so important, because it's not just about what happened, it's about how it's being discussed. And right now, the discussion itself is becoming part of the story. People are watching not just the claims, but the reactions to the claims. They're watching who answers directly and who doesn't. They're watching how quickly the tone shifts and why. And all of that feeds into the bigger picture. So when you hear repeated claims that this is dangerous, it's worth asking what that actually means. Is it dangerous to ask questions? Or is it dangerous to avoid answering them? That's the question a lot of viewers are sitting with right now. Because if the goal is to move forward and clear things up, then the path is simple. Answer clearly, address the timeline, close the gaps. That's how you calm a situation down. But if that doesn't happen, then the conversation keeps growing and more people keep getting involved. And that's exactly where we are. So now it comes down to you. What do you think is really happening here? Do you believe the situation is being handled fairly? Or does it feel like the focus is being shifted away from the real questions? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those moments where every opinion adds to the bigger conversation. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's been following along, because this story is still unfolding and there's more to break down. Stay tuned, stay informed, and I'll catch you in the next one.